Hi there, welcome to Way to Grow. I'm Shaw TV's Laura Ravey, and it's harvest time. It's the fantastic time of year for gardeners and farmers. This is Dwayne Friesen from Lacoste, and we're talking about how to know when your vegetables are ready to pick.
Yeah, and you said harvest time, and it's nice to be able to actually benefit with the fruits of your labor in the most real sense of the term. And you put all that work in over the summer, and now things are finally looking good in the garden that you can go out there and pick your fresh produce. And we're surrounded by fresh produce. Everything here is from local growers. And so you can grow this too in your own yard. And we're seeing, we've talked about it lots over the show this year, about how many more people are wanting to grow their own vegetables, not necessarily to have enough to stock themselves for the winter, but to have that fresh food on their tables for the late summer and into fall months. So I thought there'd be some interest in maybe knowing some of the care handling of the produce when you get it, or even when it's ready. And one of the more common questions that I get is even with potatoes. When can I start picking my potatoes? And you know that you can get baby potatoes right from probably end of June, beginning of July on. And potatoes will just keep on growing as long as the top of the plant is alive. The potatoes will keep growing, but you can start harvesting your potatoes very, very early on in the year and keep going. So that's, you know, I get a lot of those questions. So I thought maybe we can talk a little bit about when some of the best times for picking are. And general rule would be, if you've got something like a lettuce or things where you're eating the stems or maybe some roots in some cases, but you want to pick a little bit earlier when those stems or leaves are going to be tender. Because if you're thinking of lettuce and you're waiting too long, that leaf is going to maybe start to taste bitter or very woody. So those are kind of things, pick them when they're a little bit more tender. You're going to get more flavor out of them. Going to the opposite end, if you go to a tomato, you want to make sure, if you can, it's always best to have that tomato ripen on the plant itself. You're going to get the most flavor on it. It's, you know, you pick it fresh, the sun's been shining on it. When you just slice it up right from when you've taken it out of the garden, you're going to notice that is going to be when it's going to be best to eat it. So that's if you want to use it fresh. And for the most part, people are going to be using their produce within a few days of picking on it.
Now, if they did want to store it, I mean, we were talking about having, you know, these people are more and more building these huge gardens. Like, how long can you store this food for?
You're going to be limited because you're dealing with a live product. What you need to have, if you are going to be storing, is cool temperatures and ventilation. That's going to be number one. So for the most part, other than your tomatoes and your peppers, they don't mind being out on the counter. But if you're thinking of your beans and your carrots and your potatoes, getting them into cool conditions in your fridge would be perfect, but also air circulation. Sometimes you need to, if there's not enough air movement around them, that doesn't remove some of the moisture on them, so that they start to rot. So you've got to have that good air circulation in there. And at the same time, though, so you got to have that air circulation so they don't rot, but you also have to have higher humidities on there, keep them fresher as well. Now, we talked about corn last week with it being sweet. There's the sugars in all the produce that, when you cool it, stops those sugars from converting to starches. So that's what keeps the flavor in the fruit. So that's where you want to cool them and keep them for as long as possible. And so that's where, if you've got storage conditions, you know, that root cellar, always going to be very cool. It's going to be dark in there, and the best place to store your vegetables over the course of the winter. But ideally, now we're just going to be talking about eating them fresh. And we've got carrots here. Carrots are going to be great. You can look at the top of the carrot. You'll always see a little bit of top sticking out when you've got them in the ground. When you've got them 3/4 of an inch or even an inch wide, easy. That's time you can start picking on them. They'll be big enough to go. But you can keep the carrots in the ground until freeze up. Or, if you would ever have a great winter where the ground wouldn't freeze, and we've had a few instances where we've got good snow cover, the ground hasn't frozen, you can keep the carrots in the ground, providing it doesn't freeze in the ground. Best tasting carrots in the spring when you dig them out of the ground.
Really? So they can stay the whole winter long?
Yeah, so if you want to put flax straw out and protect them, carrots taste unbelievably. But carrots are a good example. Here we've got some broccoli that's growing from here. If you're growing broccoli, the best, you want to pick it before the flowers actually start to open up. So you're going to be watching the growth on that. You're going to be picking them before the flowers actually start to open up. Got cabbage here, some of the early cabbage. Nice tight heads on it. Cabbage, if they get too big, they'll start splitting. You got to use them at that point, or ideally you pick them just before they start splitting. I got some onions back here. Beautiful display of onions. Onions will be much like the carrots too. They'll keep growing as long as you keep them in the ground, but once you see the stalks fold over, you know that they're ready to be picked, but you can leave them right up until the first hard frost and get the onions in at that point, and then you can leave the stalks on, tie them up, keep them dry, and cool again, responding very well to the cool temperatures. And that's how you're going to store them and keep them fresh over the course of the winter. So just a few things to keep in mind with your produce. Again, picking them. If you want them to store a little bit longer, you're going to pick them a little bit more on the tender side for storage, that you're going to be able to keep them. If you want to use them fresh and get the full advantage of that flavor, pick them when they're ripe, like I was talking about with tomato.
Awesome. People have questions about their produce. They're not sure if we didn't cover something. You're inviting people to come down and ask you personally here at Lacoste.
Yeah, if you want to come down here and take a look at our produce, we've got produce all from local growers here, so it's all Manitoba grown. But the staff here are all gardeners themselves, and they know how to handle this stuff. So if you have any questions, you can come see me or any of the staff here at Lacoste Garden Centre. We're located at 2787 St. Mary's Road, or you can visit us online at lacostegardencentre.ca.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Laura.